They are anonymous and yet everyone knows them. They're the emblematic hacktivists of the hacker collective Anonymous. Anonymous mysterious hackers are spread all over the world, using the vast expanses of the internet to conceal themselves and to take punitive action against those who dare to stand in their way. The most gifted hackers on the planet have therefore come together in this club of geeks, which has made its mark on the global internet scene. But who's really hiding behind this enigmatic name, to say the least, and under this mask that came out of the right roof of the movie V for Vendetta? And what are the real motivations of this mysterious collective, which seems to bring together millions of internet users under the same banner? That's what we're going to find out in this video, so make yourself comfortable, because we're going to start. It is really quite difficult to understand the vision and plans of an organization that has no leadership and no formal structure. Anonymous is seen as a movement whose focus is hacktivism, and whose members present themselves as defenders of the right to freedom of expression on and off the internet. As a result, there is no supreme chief, no secretary, let alone subordinates, and all those affiliated with them have neither membership cards nor any official status. Anonymous, as its name makes it very clear, is therefore completely anonymous, but above all, it is an organization that is virtually unassailable, since it has no governance or hierarchy. So, who is really hiding behind this ghostly entity that is causing cold sweats to the powerful of this world? To find out and answer the question, we have to go back to the origins of the movement, in 2003 to be more precise, and on one of the most fashionable forums on the internet, the famous 4chan. The site, designed as a vast virtual agora, hosts forums dedicated to a wide variety of topics, from anime and manga to video games, music, literature, fitness, politics, and sports, among others. The name Anonymous is inspired by the perceived anonymity under which some users post images and comments on 4chan. From there came the jokes of other users who identified themselves, and pretended that Anonymous was one person, with the ability to post millions of messages simultaneously on thousands of forums. So, as the website became more popular and more visitors, the idea of Anonymous being a collective of unnamed individuals became a real internet meme. However, from 2003 to 2007, Anonymous will only be talked about by a few pranks and mass raids by occasional 4chan users. Like during this raid, on July 12, 2006 for example, where a large number of them invaded the Finnish social networking site Habbo Hotel with identical avatars. They prevented Habbo's regular members from accessing the digital hotel's pool, claiming it was closed due to failure and AIDS. A rather childish action after all, but one that hinted at the dissident and anarchist thinking that dominated the young digital movement. But the fame of the name Anonymous started in 2008 with the Chanology project, with which the movement would definitely endorse its hacktivist nature. It all actually started when the American gossip blog Gawker posted a propaganda video, in which the famous Scientologist actor Tom Cruise praised this highly controversial religion. The Church of Scientology then sent them a cease and desist order for copyright infringement, which was considered a violent infringement of the freedom of the press by many 4chan users. In retaliation, they organized a series of attacks consisting of telephone hoaxes on the church's hotline, sending fraudulent all-black faxes to use the ink cartridges, and massive attacks on their website. It was as if a veritable digital deluge was descending on the head of the church, all the channels and networks of which were very quickly saturated. During the flood, a group from Anonymous even posted a YouTube video in which a robotic voice spoke on behalf of the movement. In this video, the leaders of Scientology were told that, for the sake of its followers and the sake of humanity, they would soon be kicked off the internet altogether. In 10 days. The video had attracted hundreds of thousands of views and provoked a media outcry and an uproar among the authorities. The authorities were overwhelmed by young, uncontrollable hackers, who were beginning to seriously frighten them. Besides, thousands of Anonymous had also joined simultaneous events at the Church of Scientology facilities around the world. Many of the demonstrators wore the stylized masks of Guy Fawkes, popularized by the graphic novel and movie V for Vendetta, in which an anarchist revolutionary fights a totalitarian government. The masks quickly became a popular symbol for Anonymous, and anti-church protests continued throughout the year. They gradually faded in the face of the church's increased security, but also the lack of interest of internet users on the subject. Anonymous will once again sink into oblivion and anonymity, until a worthy cause emerges, which is what Anonymous is about to do. For example, In September 2010, Anonymous learned of Iplex Software, an Indian software company that had contracted with film studios to launch massive attacks on websites used by copyright infringers, such as the Pirate Bay. The response from the Anonymous is not long in coming and it will be brutal, so on September 17, they launched massive attacks that managed to shut down the Iplex website for a day. The group then targeted the Recording Industry Association of America (RIAA) and the Motion Picture Association of America (MPAA), succeeding in bringing down both sites as well. In doing so, the hacktivist group issued a shocking statement, which basically said that Anonymous was tired of corporate interests, which controlled the internet and silenced people's rights to spread information. Because according to them, the RIAA and the MPAA were only pretending to help artists and their cause, when in truth, they were doing nothing of the sort, and in their eyes, there was no hope, only signs of the dollar. The payback operation had begun and its objectives quickly expanded to include the British law firm Axe Law, the Australian Federation Against Copyright Theft, the British Discotheque Ministry of Sound, a Spanish copyright society, and even the US Copyright Office. As of October 7, 2010, the total downtime of all websites attacked during Operation Payback was 537.55 hours, a real financial disaster for these organizations. In the years following Operation Payback, the targets of anonymous demonstrations, hacks, and ultra-massive attacks continued to diversify. For example, in November 2010, when the WikiLeaks organization began leaking hundreds of thousands of U.S. diplomatic cables, PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa websites cut off their services to put pressure on the organization. Of course, not surprisingly, Anonymous didn't see it that way, and Operation Avenge Assange was launched, along with a press release declaring PayPal a target. The attacks took down PayPal.com for 1 hour on December 8, and another brief period on December 9, while seriously disrupting Visa and MasterCard's sites on the same day. PayPal estimates that the damage cost the company $5.5 million, although that amount could be much higher, given the countless transactions made every second via this means of payment. But it was undoubtedly the Arab Spring that allowed Anonymous to demonstrate its great usefulness, especially in the face of the censorship policies of Arab governments. Their help has indeed allowed many bloggers in these countries to bypass censorship to communicate on the situation, like Lina Ben Emheni in Tunisia. As a result, thousands of videos and photos taken have been distributed and viewed by Western societies as well as the rest of the world. Their first action in this context took place on January 2, 2011, in Tunisia, 2 weeks after the death of the young vegetable merchant Mohamed El Bouazizi, which triggered the revolutionary catalysis within Operation Tunisia. Anonymous quickly developed a first aid kit, informing cyber dissidents about how to maintain their anonymity online and techniques to avoid being detected on the internet by government cyber police. Anonymous used its collective intelligence to develop a special extension to the Mozilla Firefox browser, designed to help Tunisians counter the intensive phishing attacks by the Tunisian government. Anonymous later collaborated with the activist group Telecomics, to help dissidents access government-censored websites in Egypt. They then participated in attacks on government websites in Bahrain, Egypt, Libya, Jordan, and Zimbabwe. The movement had by then acquired enough maturity and power to be able to measure itself against governments and weigh heavily in the global geostrategic balance. Anonymous would later go after even bigger fish, such as the FBI or the U.S. Department of Justice, by forcing down many of their servers, in retaliation for the shutdown of the Megaupload share site. The hacktivist movement had almost declared a cyberwar and promised to launch numerous sting operations against the U.S. government. In France, it was the site of the Presidency of the Republic, which had approved the closure of Megaupload in a communiqué, and Hadopi's site, which was also targeted. The website of L'Express, whose editor Christophe Barbier had called Anonymous thieves for supporting hacking, was also attacked. So Anonymous was not in the least cold-blooded, and no longer hesitated to attack the powerful of this world. This was to be demonstrated once again, this time targeting one of the most dangerous and deadly terrorist groups in the world, the terrible Daesh. So, on January 8, 2015, after the shooting at Charlie Hebdo's headquarters, Anonymous claimed it wanted to avenge the satirical newspaper. They attacked terrorist websites and Twitter accounts belonging to Daesh activists and radical preachers, with no regard for the threat to their heads. For the hacktivist movement has, so to speak, proclaimed itself a defender of individual freedoms and guarantor of human rights. And even today it proves it, in these times of pandemic and racist police violence. It is thus following the death of George Floyd, that the group comes out of the silence of several years and launches several attacks on the Minneapolis police site. The movement hacked into the radio communications of the Chicago police and broadcast "Fuck the Police" music, still faithful to its tradition of shock anarchist hacktivism, full of humor and facetiousness. So, what do you think about the origin of Anonymous and the incredible history of Anonymous? Did it impress you? Give us your thoughts in the comments.